Tonight, we continue our focus on the bill before the United States Congress alleging Christian genocide in Nigeria. Reactions continue to pour in over the nomination of Professor Joash Amupitan as civil society organizations demand transparent Senate screening, and Action Democratic Congress hangs on to the benefit of doubt. Welcome to Politics Today, everyone. I'm Terry Kumi, standing in for Sheon Okimbaloye. Well, we're continuing our focus on the bill before the United States Congress seeking to require the Secretary of State to designate the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a country of particular concern to impose certain sanctions. Now, while the federal government admits that there's a security problem, it denies the claims made by Senator Ted Cruz of the United States. But the Christian Association of Nigeria says many Christian communities have suffered attacks resulting in several loss of lives. And in a statement, Can President Daniel Oko called on security agencies to urgently arrest the spate of killings and attacks in the country. Can goes on to say that it affirms without hesitation that many Christian communities in parts of Nigeria, especially in the north, have suffered severe attacks, loss of lives, and the destruction of places of worship. It describes these attacks as painful reminders of the urgent need for government and security agencies to act decisively to protect every citizen, regardless of region or religion. Khan says it calls on government and security agencies to take urgent, transparent, and equitable action to end the killings, safeguard vulnerable Christian communities from displacement, and ensure that perpetrators face the full weight of the law. The pain of Christian families, according to Khan, torn apart by violence, must never be treated as mere statistics. We therefore renew our call on government and security agencies to take urgent, transparent, and equitable action to end the killings. Now, civil society organizations have collectively released a statement on their position on the nomination of Professor Joash Amupitan. The statement was signed by 10 of them. The CSOs say they acknowledge Professor Amupitan's academic and professional accomplishments and have no objection in principle to his nomination. However, according to them, the current state of Nigeria's electoral process requires a fiercely independent INEC, immune to political manipulation, and unwavering in its commitment to credible elections. According to that statement, as the next INEC chairman, if confirmed by the Senate, he must demonstrate moral courage and resistance to political interference. INEC works better when it is insulated from political interference. The statement goes on to highlight what they call a call to action. First is the call on the Senate to ensure that its confirmation hearings are transparent, televised, and inclusive of citizen and civil society input through memoranda, petitions, and participation in the confirmation hearings. The second is that the Senate should undertake a rigorous examination of his competence, that's Professor Amupitan now, public records, vision for electoral reforms, INEC's institutional strengthening, as well as his capacity to resist political interference and uphold electoral integrity, as well as the Senate to interrogate the nominees' plans to address systemic challenges, including voter registration, results transmission, and enforcement of INEC's regulations and guidelines. So we have so much to talk about today, and we will touch on those two issues when we come back from our political roundup. Stay with us.
The National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Professor Nentawe Yewande, is asking members of the party in River State to support Governor Siminalayi Fubara in the interest of the state and the people. Professor Yewada said this while addressing some delegates of the APC from River State in his hometown in Kankino-Kukumen area of Plateau State. The FCT police commanders announced the arrest of 12 armed robbery suspects responsible for the death of Ms. Somtochukwu Maduagu, an anchor with Arise News, and Barnabas Danlami, a security guard in a robbery operation at Unique Apartment, Katampe Extension, Mabushi, Abuja, on the 29th of September 2025. In a statement by the FCT Police Public Relations Officer, the Commissioner of Police, FCT Command, Ajawa Adewale, established a special investigation team led by the Deputy Commissioner of Police, State Criminal Investigation Department, and assisted by the Scorpio Squad, with a clear mandate to track down and dismantle the criminal network behind the attack. The All Progressives Congress APC in Adamawa State has organized a grassroots stakeholders engagement and sensitization meeting in Yola, the Adamawa State capital. Speaking at the event, the National Vice Chairman of Northeast Zone of the party, Mustafa Salihu, says because of the positive impact of the reforms introduced by President Bola Tinubu is beginning to have in the country, all Nigerians should support the party at all levels to consolidate the visible achievements. Lastly, the National Chairman of the Action Alliance, AA, Kenneth Udeze, says there is no contempt judgment against the immediate past chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, by the Federal High Court in Oshogbo, Osun State. In a statement signed by Mr. Udeze, he said the party did not sue Professor Yakubu and did not mandate anyone to do so. He challenged agri party members to produce the alleged court order describing the claim as false and misleading, and called on INEC not to recognize the judgment and to continue to recognize the Udeze-led national leadership based on multiple court of appeal rulings.
All right, well, just before going to the conversation, we have a conversation with the Senate President, but before then, there's the new angle of the Christian Association of Nigeria throws up a new argument and concerns around this allegation of genocide by the United States. Parliament unanimously, especially in the House of Representatives, had said that there was no such thing and that it's empirical data that needs to be transmitted to the United States Congress for them to be aware of what exactly is happening. The Senate has chosen to have an executive session to have a more detailed conversation around it, such that they can have a position to take and then, escalate the situation. We also know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been on this for a while. A lot of people don't know that this bill, the specific bill, was also in the House of the United States. And these concerns have been raised repeatedly. There's a conversation around an engagement that happened, which the House Committee Chairman on Foreign Affairs and the House of Representatives here in Nigeria had said that Nigeria was excluded from, and that is how they arrived at this decision. But let's hear the Senate President on this.
It's also capable of affecting the dignity of Nigerians wherever they go to. Therefore, we must have a strategy to approach this issue. And so, leader of the Senate, my personal opinion is that this has been brought to the fore of the Senate, and then we must have exhaustive deliberations in closed session on this, and then we must also come up with a strategy to correct the misinterpretation, the misinformation, and at the same time educate the international community.
All right, so here's this this bill in the House of the U.S. that I was talking about. The U.S. has a bill, House Resolution 220, that talked about Congress expressing the sense regarding the need to designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern. And that bill, which was first introduced in March, on the 11th of March 2025, had something to say about a meeting based on the testimony of one Frank Wolf, who is a commissioner of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, before the House of Representatives. He made this testimony before the Foreign Affairs Committee Subcommittee on Africa on Wednesday, February 14, 2024. And it says that majority of commissioners have traveled to Nigeria either in their personal or U.S. CIRF capacities, which is the Committee on Religious Freedom, the subcommittee. And they've met with the U.S. officials. They, specifically in July 2022, they met with the U.S. officials, they met with Nigerian government officials, they met with civil society organizations, religious communities and development partners. And according to him, the conclusion from that visit and ongoing research continues to be that the government of Nigeria is perpetrating and tolerating systemic, ongoing and egregious violations of freedom of religion or belief. And I also did say that Honorable Oluwole Oke, in his submission on the floor of the House on Wednesday when this matter came up, said that, Tuesday specifically, he said that Nigeria was excluded from the conversation, and that is how this conclusion was reached. But we're being joined by a former Foreign Affairs Minister, who is a political professor of politics, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, to have a conversation on this. And also in the studio, we have Honorable Mark Gbela, who's a former member of the House of Representatives, to talk on this. Honorable, welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you very much.
So I will sort out the connection with Professor Akinyemi. I just want to get your thoughts on this. The U.S. planning to designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern is raising concerns. It is a big deal, isn't it? Or is it just the political class that should be concerned about it?
No, I think it's a big deal because, and this is where, and first of all, let me say good evening again, Terry, and thank you for having me on the program. It's a big deal because the actions of the political class invariably has an effect on the rest of the country and the rest of the people. You can see now that the oversight or the inactions of the political class now is causing this unfortunate designation of the Nigerian country and by extension its people. Now, where does this stem from? As somebody who is currently very affected by this spate of insecurity, my community is probably the fulcrum of these incessant attacks and killings. Now, it is important to note that why we believe that designation would have occurred is because these actions predominantly have been in areas where they're predominantly Christian. In Plateau State, in Benue State, yes, we agree that certain attacks occur in other parts of the country, but those ones are mainly not the issues that I believe the U.S. government was referring to. It refers to the issue of the livelihood of people. In our state, for instance, an agrarian state, they can hardly cultivate their crops any longer. There's a lot of hunger and poverty, a plethora of IDP camps littered all over the state, also in Plateau State. So obviously, this is also something that the political class should be, held accountable for, because it behoves on them to do and take the necessary action to avoid such a designation by the U.S. Security and the welfare of the people is the primary role of government.
Absolutely. We do understand that Nigeria is a very key partner of the U.S. I think mainly energy and security. We benefit very much from the U.S. in terms of security. But the point now would be, what would be the impact of this? And we would tie that to the federal government's response since this news broke. How would you assess the federal government's response to this beyond Parliament?
Yes, I was going to say that I would commend the Parliament because they are the ones who have responded, accordingly to this. Of course, those of us who are in those affected communities, we don't necessarily agree with their response because we also hold them responsible for ensuring the executive secures our communities, So when you have that latitude in that area, obviously these kind of things occur. But of course, the implication of this, especially with the recent attempts by the government to woo investors and to look for foreign direct investment, you would see that this unfortunately would affect all those efforts because America and their citizens and their businessmen will obviously now take a step back and begin to reconsider any proposed or planned investments in the country. And of course, you know the influence America has on the Committee of Nations. So that obviously sends the wrong signal across the world to other countries and their own indigenes and citizens who are also thinking about Nigeria as a location of investment. And this again brings us back to the fundamentals. And that is why some of us have been crying about what our president should consider as a priority, the security. Before we talk about very big and humongous projects, is it secure for our people to live and earn a living in their communities right now? Recently, the brother of a friend of mine was kidnapped in Cross River, and they had to pay a ransom. This is occurring daily all around us. Bandits are now and terrorists are being negotiated with in Katsina State. This is occurring under our president's watch. And I believe that Mr. President, if he's listening to us, should understand that we love this country. And it is important that he hears some of these things and knows the concern of our people. Nobody is antagonistic. He needs to hear the other side of the story. And that is what we're trying to say here now.
Let me get your thoughts on this. You praise Parliament for the step they've taken. I'm hoping that Honorable Oluwole Okewo, the chairman of House Committee on Foreign Affairs, will join us and give us an update, because it's been 24 hours. And Parliament at the time considered it to be very urgent and needed to act on it. Unanimously, Parliament disagrees that there is a religious
connotation
to it. Do you praise them for that? Do you agree with them on that as well?
I praise them for their prompt response, because anything that affects the image of the country needs to be responded to. And also, in addition to your other question, which I didn't respond to, the government, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, didn't respond to it appropriately like we expected. But obviously, perhaps because it came from the U.S. Senate, so the Parliament also here has responded accordingly. So that is the part that I'm commending them about. And now, whether or not their position is accurate, in my opinion, is a cause for political consideration. Because for some of us, we have always been crying out about the fact that there seemed to be an agenda, a land grabbing one, as the case may be, and of course some connotation of ethnicity and religion too, with regards to the attacks. And of course, we will not discountenance the fact that these countries also have their security apparatus, their intelligence, sources, where they're also getting this information. So largely, yes, with regards to the issues in our part of the country, which is the North Central, that fundamentally, yes, I would think has a certain religious connotation to it.
But when you speak like this, and we hear members of Parliament of different religions, different tribes and ethnicities speak somewhat unanimously that this is not the truth, it takes away the responsibility of Parliament to mount pressure on the executive to provide security for the people, doesn't it? If they don't believe that this is a situation. And I ask this question because the general perception, the greater perception now of the people is that the political class is trying to protect themselves because there's no telling what the sanctions would be.
Okay, so let me say that, and I'm not holding brief for the House of Representatives or the Senate at this point, but I believe that there's a unanimity in their position about the insecurity in the country and the fact that there's action required to be taken. I think that part they are unanimous about. So the issue now about the Christian connotation or otherwise is where, yes, I agree with those of the people of the country who feel they're being politically correct about it and not trying to send off the wrong signals. But we should do that by addressing the main issue. Because like I said, if the needful had been done before now, by the government, then there would have been no need for this issue to have escalated to the point it has. And yes, obviously they're concerned about those sanctions, like I said, direct and indirect ones, the implication it has on the investment drive of the country, and the fact that for a government that has been borrowing incessantly, that will also affect certain considerations in certain quarters, most probably. This is my own understanding.
The second part of that bill with regards to the allegations of genocide does not entirely say the government is responsible.
Yes, of course.
It just says government is condoning it.
Yes, of course. I read that part of it too. And that is why in my part of the country, we have said this severally, that there's a genocidal attack and attempt on the people of Benue, and by extension even Plateau, because of the fact that those who are being attacked and driven out of their homes. In the last report in Yelwata, you're a witness to that, and the number of people that were killed, burnt, innocent women and children. So that in itself already begins to confirm those allegations of genocide, which is what we have been crying out about in Benue. So the onus is on the government. So nobody is blaming the government as being responsible for it. Obviously not. But we're concerned that the government, yes, the government is not doing enough to handle that. If we're spending, again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, because I've said in this platform, not this platform, but in this studio before, that if we're spending 15 trillion, which the Minister of Works cannot defend, on a road, what have we done about our security infrastructure? What are we doing about our security infrastructure? It is unheard of that we are planning such investment for an insecure environment. Who are the investors that we're trying to invite?
Okay. All right, let's go to Professor Bolaji Akinyemi now. He joins us virtually. Prof, good evening and welcome to Politics Today.
Good evening, Terry. I don't think we've met before.
No, we haven't.
Thank you for inviting me to. Thank you for inviting me to your program.
It's an honor to have you. Professor, Minister of Foreign Affairs, I'd like to find out from you what your initial reaction was to this news, and most importantly, how you would assess the federal government's reaction to it.
Well, I think we have a problem here. When we were preparing for this program, my understanding was that I was going to talk about the developments in the Middle East, the connection with the Nobel Peace Prize that was announced today, and not this topic that you have brought up. I seldom like to stray away from my area of specialty.
Oh, my most sincere apologies, Prof. Then let me wrap up with Honorable Wheeler now, and I'll come back to you. But I don't know if it was, as a Foreign Affairs Minister, I think you probably have an advice or two for the federal government on how to go about this, considering that this is a diplomatic issue, isn't it?
You are quite right, but it's a question of preparation. Obviously, this has an impact on our foreign policy profile and the profile of the country, as a whole. And whatever affects the profile, the Nigerian government has to take it seriously. I don't think it's a question of American Senate versus Nigerian Senate. I think it is something that needs to be handled at a much higher level. I'm particularly worried by the fact that during the debate and in deciding what action to take, the Nigerian representative in Washington was excluded from the debate. That just doesn't sound right to me. But as I said, it's the issue of a Nobel Peace Prize and the implication for the development in the Middle East that really I was coming to talk about.
All right, Prof. What we'll do now is take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll expand on that conversation with you, if you'll stay with us. And then with Honorable Makbila, we're also expecting Honorable Oluwole to join us, and he's going to give us some new information on what Parliament is doing so far, because the argument now is on whether this should be a parliament-to-parliament intervention or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should take this up diplomatically. We also know that the ministry had told Parliament that it had initiated moves to address the situation. But we all know how bills go, Honorable Bila. You know how this is. An external body cannot influence a bill. The bill will go through its process, and this is where Parliament comes in. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Politics Today. We still have Professor Bolaji Akinyemi with us and the Honorable Mark Wheeler, former member of the House of Representatives. Prof, let me also just once again explain and apologize that the mix-up in communication is the reason why you may not be able to stay as long as you want with us. But you had wanted to talk about the situation, the Nobel Peace Prize that's been awarded to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Machado. What are your thoughts on that? Of course, Trump was in the running for it, but he didn't get it. So what does this mean?
Well, you are quite right to bring up the linkage between the two. My worry now is, now that Trump did not get the Nobel Prize, is he going to turn his back on developments in the Middle East? Because in a way, he's been driving it to ensure that peace returns to the Middle East, and hoping that he will then be rewarded with the value of the Nobel Prize. I'm particularly happy. And so I think a lot of scholars that the gravitas of the Nobel Prize has been sustained. It has not been diminished by the committee allowing themselves to be bullied by Trump. Trump is used to bullying people, to bullying nations, to bullying presidents. And finally, a committee stands up to him and says, no, we are not going to allow ourselves to be bullied. I'm very happy about that. By their act today, they sustained the value and the gravitas of the Nobel Prize. But we may pay a price for it if Trump decides now to turn his back on developments in the Middle East. Number two, I'm surprised that people keep talking about how this is the developments in the Middle East is something we've never seen before. There have been 4 or 5 wars in the Middle East. How do people think those wars were brought to an end? It's by the intervention of, presidents in different parts of the world. That's how the wars were brought to an end. So why is everybody talking as if what Trump has done in bringing peace to the Middle East is something that has never been done before? We're all allowing Trump to dictate the language in world politics and in peace politics, which I don't think is justified.
All right, Prof, let me bring it back home now and get you to assess Nigeria's relationship with the U.S. under President Donald Trump. And perhaps you can link that to this recent back and forth on the alleged genocide. What's your assessment?
Of course, as a Nigerian, I'm depressed and I'm upset that the charge of genocide would be leveled at my country. When you compare what is happening in Nigeria with what Netanyahu has done in the Middle East, to now link Nigeria and put us in the same basket with Israel and accuse us of genocide, I think it's unjustified. I listened to the honorable gentleman who you were talking to earlier, and it is true that there are unsavory developments in this country, especially in the Middle Belt, that worry us. But it doesn't amount to genocide. Genocide, the magnitude of the effect of the death of what have you is such that, you see, when you misuse words in the way you diminish the impact of whatever it is you are trying to do, we Nigerians must understand that there are consequences to actions. And when we run down our own country, and the running down is unjustified, number one, we are demarketing our country. Number two, we are demarketing our image. And number three, is every Nigerian who then gets affected by what is said and what is unsaid. And this is a classical example of that. Now the charge of genocide is being leveled against our country. It doesn't help issues. It doesn't help matters. Having said that, it is a signal to Nigerian authorities that perhaps they are not taking this matter as seriously as they should. Those of us in the field of international affairs are always reminding Nigerians and the government itself, whether it is issue of passports, whether it is issue of passing our citizens, from one. Even I think early this morning, I was listening to again somebody on one of the channels talking about trafficking of 10-year-old Nigerian girls to Cote d'Ivoire. 10-year-old. Now, this has effect on the image of Nigeria. And now we are seeing the impact again on us, on our image, when we are being accused, we are being charged with committing genocide against our own people. The Nigerian government must take this issue very seriously. As I said in my intro at the beginning, it's not just a question for Senate. It's not Senate versus Senate. At the highest level, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, State Department, National Security Advisor in the United States, and this is where some of us have said that we have, since we instituted the status of National Security Advisor in Nigeria, we have never really given it, we have been accorded it, the status it should be accorded. But now that the Nigerian Security Advisor has been saddled with internal and domestic security affairs, maybe he also should take it up at that level with his colleague in the United States and explain matters and explain issues. I don't know why we're waited until the matter has gone this far in the United States Congress before it has even become an issue of public concern to us in Nigeria.
Right.
But because before you know it, they will cancel passports, they will cancel visas, and when you now want to run for Security Council positions, this matter will then arise, and genocide will now be attached to the name and the status of our country. It's a matter of deep concern.
Prof, I'd like to thank you very much. You've put it rightly, and so Honorable Wheeler nodding to your last comments, because Nigeria is seeking that permanent seat. Well, thank you very much, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, for finding time to speak with us, and apologies once again for the mix-up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Wheeler, I know you're going to take it up from where he left off, but I want to ask you a question based on what he said, and this was another thing that was raised in Parliament. Where do we draw the line between telling the truth as it is and demarketing the country?
Okay, now it's important to always realize that in trying to address the issues that concern the country in an apolitical manner and in a manner that does not, like you pointed out, demarket the country, it does not prevent us from being truthful and seeking the required assistance. I recollect during the tenure of President Goodluck Jonathan, and I believe even during President Buhari's reign, there were attempts by the U.S. government to assist, to even provide some intervention with regards to the insecurity in the country. And there were reports that that was not very well handled by our own security apparatus here. So obviously, these things do not send the right signals about our willingness to have that matter settled. There are current and existing technologies, payload-carrying drones that do not require any boots on the ground, that can identify the locations of these terrorists and take necessary action. So when we try to gloss over what we need to do, we now start to try to manage the situation. So for some of us, we would not be prevented because of our statutory rights from telling the truth. We're not trying to demarket the country, but we're trying to get those at the position of authority to do what is required and what is necessary. Okay. And I believe that even the government, even our president himself, can address factually what is going on in the country and call those required to intervene, the service chiefs, to do the needful, give them, an ultimatum, a deadline to resolve. Even our own governor on this TV network, if you remember, if you recollect, mentioned the fact that he too alluded to the semblance of a genocide against our people in Benue, with the incessant attacks from who we have identified to a particular ethnicity.
Right, okay. I think this calls for, as Prof put it, more detailed action.
Yes, it should be escalated to the highest level, like he said.
Like he said,
yes.
Absolutely. Do we have Honorable Oluwole with us now? He is the Chairman House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs, and he's been trying to establish a connection. But I would like us to switch this conversation until we get Honorable Oluwole. Hopefully we can get him before we wrap up this conversation. Let me get your reaction to the appointment of Professor Joash Amupiton, the nomination. There are reactions now as to, it doesn't seem like negative reactions for now, but there is just new information, which is that he was a lawyer to the APC in 2023.
Okay, so I am not holding brief for Mr. President, but I'm doing him a favor by clarifying, because I've done my own research, and from the records available, court records, certified CTCs of court documents, he was not listed. There's an Osipiton, a Taiwo Osipiton, and not Amupiton. on that legal team. So that, I believe, should put that to rest. I don't know if he got involved in another instance, but with regards to that legal team that was representing the president that I have records of, he was not part of that team. So, but the important thing to point out, and Professor Amupiton is somebody that I'm familiar with, that I know, and I even reached out to after his appointment, because I believe that there are certain things that we should address as a country. Again, we're at the verge of another fundamental period in our country that would enhance, just like we're talking about this U.S. issue, again, the profile and the image of our country. I don't know why, and this is my own concern, why we have jettisoned those same people in 2015 who were upright. Nigerians are asking, where are they? Who were upright and ensured that the will of the people was upheld. Because once we keep going to the academia, I am not denigrating them, I am not disregarding them, but we have seen over time, there's no statute that says it has to be somebody from the academia. It doesn't have to be a professor. It just has to be an upright citizen, non-partisan. And there are people like, for example, somebody who has in the past shown that kind of attribute, a Mikey Guinea, for instance, who caused prosecution of people, electoral officers who compromised.
All right, let me pause you here, because I'm told we need to take a quick break, and then we'll come back, we'll wrap up this conversation. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Politics Today. Honorable Wheeler, we're talking about Professor Amukwiton. And I just want to ask you this, because we don't have time anymore. What do you expect from him? Because I've seen statements from opposition parties, and they don't seem to want to jump the gun yet. Yes. Everybody is believing in him.
Well, yes, because the credibility or otherwise of our election starts with this appointment. And I believe that Mr. President should know that. Whatever efforts he's doing to attract investment into the country still boils down to our electoral process and the credibility of it. So it's important that we emphasize the need for expertise. While I know Amupiton personally, I know he has not had any experience in INEC. There are people in INEC who, like I mentioned one of previously, who have been proven to do the work. Why were people like Mike Guinea not considered? Is there any concern about such people who have shown forthrightness? So, but let me give Professor Amupiton the benefit of the doubt.
Just like
the civil societies are doing. But it is not a nomination that makes everybody cry uhuru at this point.
Very well. Then let's go to Honorable Oluwole Oken now. He's Honorable. First of all, thank you. I know you've been struggling to get this right, but thank you very much for joining us. Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs. Do you have new information? It's been 24 or 48 hours since the resolution to issue a démarche, I believe, on this issue. Is there any new information you can share with us on how far Parliament has gone so far in 48 hours?
Hello?
Honorable, if you can hear me, it's been 48 hours since the resolution of the House to interface with the Foreign Affairs Ministry to issue a démarche. I don't know if that's been done. Could you give us an update on that?
We swung into action. Procedurally, we've gotten the referral from the House, from the clerk of the House, and we've directed the clerk of the Committee on Foreign Affairs to convey the resolution of the House to the Minister of Foreign Affairs for further executive actions. But on our part, we plan to work along with the Senate, with our counterpart in the Senate, because in the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Parliament, the House had made similar resolution in the past. Now it's at the Senate level, so it makes sense for both the House and the Senate in Nigeria to work together and confront this issue.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that because a lot of people think that this just came up. But this didn't just come up. Since March, the House had passed that resolution. How is it that it's taken this long for action to be taken? I think, if I recall correctly, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been aware of this CPC designation.
I mean, that is a fact. That is a fact. As a matter of fact, and for records, when the subcommittee of the U.S. Congress Committee on Foreign Affairs conducted a public hearing, we got wind of it that Nigerians, even our representative, our CDA or our acting High Commissioner at Washington, was not even allowed to attend the hearing. And on that basis, we took steps because when a lawyer writes a letter, you allow a lawyer to reply. So when legislature or legislative arm of the government is taking action, you also allow your own legislative arm to also react. So we took steps, to go there and, convey the true nature of situation in Nigeria, in Nigeria, there is no religious conflict. Yes, I will admit that we have insecurity issues.
Right.
But to say that the Christians are being massacred, it's not true.
All right. Honorable, thank you very much. I wish we had more time because I'd like to think you have more information for us, but your connection didn't allow us. And I see you're on the road. You've been in transit, and thank you very much, in fact, for even finding time to join us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Honorable Oluwole Oke is the chairman of House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs. And I've also been speaking with Honorable Mark Wheeler, who's a former member of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that's Politics Today. Thanks for your time. I'm Terry Kumi. Goodbye.